Excellent. Okay, right. So, hello everybody. Welcome to London DevOps. Let me completely fail to operate PowerPoint properly. Welcome to London DevOps. This is meetup number 75. We've been running since 2014 doing meetups. Hello to you if you are here for the first time. I usually say this to a room full of people and ask people to put their hands up to say whether they've been before. We can probably do that on Zoom, but I think we're all sick of Zoom functionality after the pandemic, so let's not bother with that. So yeah, 75th meetup. Just to explain why we're doing this online, there's two reasons. Number one, in London, we find that over the summer months, that people do things like going off on holiday and going to the pub in the evenings instead of wanting to go to meetups and sit in a stuffy room with lots of fellow geeks. So we don't generally run meetups in the summer, but we got thinking, why don't we actually do something a little bit different? One of the things we noticed during the pandemic when we went virtual and went onto Zoom and did our meetings over Zoom was that we got audiences from all around the world, literally all around the world, including and speakers as well from all around the world. So, for example, tonight's speaker, John, joined us remotely from Atlanta during the pandemic, and that was an opportunity that we wouldn't get usually when we're doing physical meetups. So, yeah, we're doing a summer session of meetups. 3 of them. Tonight's with John. We've got Mark Miller and also Patrick Dubois will be speaking over the next couple of months, just to tide us over into September. So, London DevOps. What's DevOps? I think probably everyone here is very bored of different definitions of DevOps. So here's my favorites. So if you haven't heard that one before, then you can add it to your list. So DevOps is also about culture. It's about tools. And London DevOps, again, the group has been running since 2014. And these are basically our 4 key reasons for being here. It's to share knowledge, it's to meet new people. Incidentally on that, this is not a webinar. I don't know about you, but I don't like Zoom webinars because you go in and you just get a single speaker and you can't really interact with them. Yes, you've got Q&A, yes, you've got chat, but actually we want to encourage a bit more participation than the webinars give us. So that's why you're all in here on a normal Zoom meeting. That does mean, however, we do run the risk of, like, if you come in and you open your mic and then you go off and talk to your kids or whatever or play loud music, then it could be disruptive. So please be careful with that sort of thing. Please do also come on camera. It would be great to see some smiley, happy faces. Or some sad faces when I start doing dad jokes. Excellent. Thank you, Gent539, better camera. So glad you're here. Is that Patrick? It might be. Anyway, so yeah, meet new people, help each other out, and we'll do lots of information coming out from the talk tonight. Everything that you hear is shareable unless indicated otherwise. Yeah, we're recording tonight. This will go up on YouTube. So yeah, John, don't say anything too controversial or classified. All right. So speaking of YouTube, there's our channel, youtube.com/c/London DevOps. Pretty much every video, every talk that we've had in those 9 odd years is up there now. So yeah, so this video will go up there. All the virtual ones are there as well. It's a really good resource that we've got to go back through the history, and especially useful if you hear something and maybe you not paying attention fully and want to go back and see it again or show it to your colleagues tomorrow. So yeah, the video will be up pretty damn soon after the event. There's our code of conduct. Oh, that's wrapped badly, sorry. Yes, it's a virtual meetup, but there's no reason why we shouldn't still have the same code of conduct that we have physically. Yes, the code of conduct, we've had to enforce it a couple of times in physical meetups. I've never had to kick anyone out of the virtual meetup yet, but there's always a first time. So I'm just going to pause and leave that on the screen just for a minute, so you can read and absorb that. Excellent. Just seeing the chat. Yeah, people joining from the first time from India, first timers coming in from all over the place, which is wonderful. So yeah, please do please do chat along. We've also got the Q&A button on the meeting enabled. So if you've got questions for John, for our speaker, then please feel free to put them there. I might ask you if you want to come off mute and ask the questions directly, just to get a bit more of a feel of interactivity. If you don't want to do that, then that's fine. Just stay quiet if I call out your name. Right, so here's the organisers of the group. This motley crew have been together since 2014 running the meetup. Yeah, how do I do this over virtual? Not quite sure. I'll just let everyone say hello. First, we've got Mark. Mark, are you here?
Yeah, hello everyone, and thank you very much for attending.
Cool, thank you, Mark. There's me. Then there's Jack. Jack's not around at the moment. I think he's actually taking a well-earned holiday. So yeah, Jack helps us out with so much of the organisation of the meetup. So thank you very much to Jack. And also Alex is here. Alex, you want to say hello?
Hi everyone. Good to see you.
Thanks, Alex. So yeah, that's us. Please do come and find one of us, either virtually or through email or Twitter or whatever. If anyone still uses Twitter, yeah, please let us know how you think we're doing. If you enjoy the meetup, if you don't enjoy the meetup, particularly if you don't enjoy the meetup, let us know what we can do to improve. We're also looking for venues. So in the autumn, we'll go back to physical meetups in September. We think we're sorted for September and October, but we need more venues. If you've got a venue in the London area, pretty much inside the Circle Line, that sort of area, that can hold 100, 150 people and are willing to host us, then please do get in touch, because yeah, the virtual meetups are great, but the physical ones are our lifeblood, and that's where the community really comes together. So please, if you have a venue, then please do get in touch. Similarly, if you want to speak, if you like, Patrick's got room in Ghent. Let's all go to Ghent. Yes, I love Ghent. I'd love to do that. Thank you. What was the other thing? Speakers, yes. So if you want to speak as well, if you've got a good topic, that the DevOps war story, a transformation tale, technical DevOps talks as well go down really, really well. Please do get in touch with one of us. Okay, so we couldn't do this without our sponsors, so I'll get to these all in turn. Firstly, Alex, do you want to say a little bit about Prism Digital?
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, hi, my name's Alex. I'm the founder of Prism Digital. We're a DevOps and cloud talent partner, stroke recruitment firm based here in London. We do a little bit of work in the USA as well. And yeah, if you're looking to hire in the DevOps space, or you're looking for a role as a DevOps engineer, come and speak to me, come and reach out to us via our website, and I'll be happy to talk to you.
Brilliant, thank you, Alex. Okay, and our second sponsor is JFrog. So JFrog come on board recently, and I'll just throw it to Ari, who wants to say a little bit probably about this event.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. We're really excited today. By the way, my name is Ari Waller. I'm the Community Meetups Manager for JFrog, and really excited to be part of the platform for the summer series for London DevOps Meetups Group. And it's so exciting to have John here as well. So I just want to quickly make an announcement about an upcoming event. 1 week from today, July 26th at 10 a.m. Central European Time, JFrog is going to be presenting our DevSecOps Hangout Lightning Talk event. This is a free virtual event, which will be action-packed 90 minutes of software supply chain security-based content that's really going to be relevant to your day-to-day. Some of the topics you'll hear from, and those are some of your speakers, you'll hear from experts that'll talk about the secrets of supply chain software, and are you really prepared for the worst, preventing risks from entering your SDLC, keys and tokens, how to be guardians of cloud security in IAM roles, and last but not least, DevOps security when developers become the target. So we also, I know, are giving away some raffles, or we're having a raffle rather, for several $100 snack boxes for your team as well. So that never hurts. And the best part is it's not a full day Zoom event, which I know we are all happy to leave in the past, but it's action-packed 90 minutes. So we hope to see everyone there. You see the QR code for which you can register, and I am going to drop right here in the chat a link for you to go ahead and register as well. So turn it back over to you, Matt, so we could hear the rest of the announcements and get to John.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Ari. And yes, we couldn't actually literally be here without JFrog tonight because they've provided the Zoom room for this. So thank you so much to them for being our Zoom sponsor. And the next sponsor is WeShape. Mr. Bate, Patrick, are you there?
Yeah, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, good stuff. Cool. So yeah, hi guys, I'm Pat. I work alongside Jack at WeShape. Yeah, really great to be and I'm really honoured to be supporting this event once again. For those of you who don't know WeShape, we're a DevOps data, cloud and software engineering consultancy, similar to Alex, based out of London. But we have just launched our nearshore model as well in Bulgaria and Poland as well. We are hiring at the moment, so I'll put my details in the chat underneath if anyone wants to pop me a quick message. But yeah, so I'll let you guys enjoy the speakers. But yeah, thank you very much for letting us support once again. Cheers, Matt.
Thanks, Pat. Okay, and we're also sponsored by O'Reilly. So O'Reilly very generously send me lots of books actually. So I've got some O'Reilly books here. We're going to have a little quiz at the end. Sorry, when I say they send me some books, they send me some books so I can give them to the community. That's not just for me, although I am particularly interested in this one. But there you go. So we'll do a little quiz at the end. So I want you to pay extra careful attention to John's talk, because there'll be some questions on John's talk and some other generic DevOps things. Apologies if you're not in the UK, I'm not going to be able to send you a book, but if you are, then yeah, please do the Slido. Hell, do the Slido if you're not in the UK, that's fine, you know, bragging rights to your mates are winning the quiz. And yeah, whoever in the UK ends up at the top of the leaderboard, I'll give you a choice of one of these 3 books to take away, not to take away, for me to post to you. So thank you to O'Reilly. Last announcement here, DevOps Days London is happening in September. So yeah, there's still tickets available for that. So please do go and click on that QR code, photo that QR code and sign up. You get 20% off for being part of the London DevOps community for DevOps Days. So yeah, that's in the QET Centre down in Westminster in London, September 21st and 22nd. So we'll just leave that there for a minute. Okay, so today's talks, we've got, we're beyond delighted to have John Willis again, and he's going to be speaking in a minute on managing shadow AI and securing LLM delivery in the DevOps era. So yeah, absolutely delighted for that. So we'll do John's talk, we'll do the quiz. So yeah, the meetup isn't going to be as long as it usually is when we're together physically. I think, yeah, we've all still got Zoom fatigue. But yeah, we've got an absolute corker of a talk for you tonight. So yeah, just to wrap up from me, just tell us what you think. So there's the meetup page. You can hashtag us on Elon Musk's plaything if you really want to. Or send us an email to org, that's the organisers, org@londondevops.co.uk. Tell us how we're doing. That's it, right? So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let John share and hand over to him, if that's okay. Okay, so yeah, we're on slide 1. If you want to do that.
We're good.
That's it, we're good. Ladies and gentlemen, John Willis.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you all. Thanks for the sponsors, everything. I wish I could be there live, but you know, maybe next fall we can come over, have fun. I love London. All right, so the rise of shadow AI. So just to give you a little bit of background, you know, Patrick, who's lurking here somewhere, you know, he said something to me which was interesting. He said, we were at DevOps Days Amsterdam, and he said, John, I haven't seen you this excited about a technology since you worked for Chef. So people who know me, you know, back in the day, if we were in a pub, people would be like, oh no, here comes Willis. He's going to show me a Chef demo, you know. So I've really, you know, I was sort of, didn't really know what I wanted to do, and then sort of found this sort of new energy that wrong or right, I'm all in. I think I was telling Matt and the team earlier before we went live, that I probably coded more in the last 3 months than I did in the last 10 years. So started my career as a coder and then went into evangelism. But anyway, so let's talk about this rise of shadow AI. So anyway, quickly about me, I've written a lot of books, worked at a lot of places. You know, if you're interested, I'm not really hard to find, but probably the thing I'm most excited about is I have a book that came out last year with co-authored. I was also a co-author of the DevOps Handbook, but really for about 10 years, I've been working on this book about Dr. Deming, hint, hint, the father of quality. But anyway, and that is actually there's actually, go figure, there's still a supply chain issue with physical books. So what we've decided to do is this is going to be through IT Revolution, the same people who produced the Phoenix Project, DevOps Handbook, Gene Kim's organization, basically. We've decided to put the book out in stages. So the Kindle version is actually available August 8th. So I'm pretty excited. This is the first book I've written on my own. And I'm very, very excited about that. So anyway, and you can order it now if you want. So, you know, one of the things I started, a friend of mine who was, you know, one of the guys that helped start the whole DevSecOps, or really DevOps for networking. He was probably pretty heavily, and I was like, Colin McNair. He's like a Silicon Valley network guru. Did a lot of, probably more DevOps stuff with networking than anybody else I know. I hooked up with him, you know, we were doing these calls, and he said, you know, have you been working with this generative AI stuff? I'm like, yeah, ChatGPT, sure, you know. And I know, like, Patrick Dubois has been really into it, and whatever Patrick's into, you probably should pay attention. You know, the last time I paid attention to Patrick, you know, this thing called DevOps happened. But I still, like, I didn't see it for me. And he was building these models in Python and actually in Google Colab, right, in Jupyter Notebooks, of how to take all this data from just scraping a bunch of data and then creating proposals. His fiance is she tries to bring food products to market, you know, proposal, raise money. And he was showing me these models where he, like, you know, we're able to sort of collect, like, the patent data, interviews from the founders, you know, financial data, and roll it in and come out with a pretty accurate report. And this is something I've been struggling with, is this idea, we'll talk a little later about, like, how do you prevent these hallucinations, is what they call them. And we'll talk about, like, why that happens. And if you know, some of this people might already know. You know, I'm trying to cover all the bases. But anyway, so I got into it. You know, one of the first things I saw is this statement by, this Jeffrey Hinton. You know, before AI is smarter than us, I think people should be encouraged to put a lot of work in understanding how it works, how it might take control away. Right? What do we have to do? Like, we can sit back and say doomsday, or we can sort of get, you know, positive bias or negative bias against it. Oh, that stuff will never work, it's garbage. Or like, oh my God, it solves everything, magic 8-ball. You know, that was another reason I wasn't really excited about it first. Like, I kept seeing people using ChatGPT, like, will I get rich? You know, will my dog bite my neighbor? You know, like, yeah, okay. You know, I'm too old for this crap, right? So but this was interesting because, you know, like I said, I went down, my friend Colin was building this stuff, and I decided I'm going to go down to Austin, hang out with him for a couple of days. And it was perfect timing because I was sort of looking for the next thing to do. And my first thought was, how could I use this technology for my Deming book? You know, I'll show you some examples of what I've done. In fact, I've learned how to use it by taking my book and building it in to sort of like get Deming accurate information without hallucinating, right? But what I found was a lot more. I started seeing the sort of the future of, like, this stuff's going to happen. What is it going to look like when it does happen? How is it going to look in IT? All the things we went through with sort of cloud native and what, you know, was traditionally called shadow IT, right? So I wrote recently an article trying to put this all together, this rise of shadow AI, and a lot of the stuff in that article I'm using in this presentation. And I'll apologize up front for some of these horrific slides that have way too much information on them, but that's what you do when you write articles first. And then you know, just pro tip, write your presentation first, then write an article. But when you write articles first, and your presentations don't come out as good, you're like, I gotta leave that line in there. I gotta leave that line in there. Anyway, so it's an interesting article, and I'm going to try to drive this whole thing. And here's the sort of summary of what I'm talking about. Like, sort of the let me see, I'll move that out of there. Like this generative AI, whatever we want to call it, there's different names, LLMs, and we'll go through sort of the naming constructs a little bit. It's leading to a new version of shadow IT. It's happening. I'd say right now, if you've got a 30,000 person organization, you probably have 300,000 Jupyter notebooks laying around, with code, and very complex code, by the way, and we'll talk about that. These models are very complex. Now, here's the beauty of these things is you can go into a simple interface and ask incredibly complex questions and have it produce incredibly interesting output. But if everything works, that's great. But the minute like you start going down, like I put something out the other day, I'm not a true coder. I pretend to be one every once in a while for, in these little runs of and the last time I had some real battles with dependencies was Ruby gems. And I still have PTSD from that. People say, John, it's really simple. You just do this. And you're like, no, man, it just never worked. I'm feeling that same pain now with all these data scientists, academia, Python libraries that automatically just show up with a missing dependency of a model that you ran 10 times over the last week. So we'll get more into that. The point is, these are very complex and opaque. They do very powerful stuff, but the minute you have to get under the covers, there's not a whole lot of experts. I mean, there's some of my questions now, I can't get answers. I couldn't get a question. I'll give you a good example. I had a question on how to turn a debug flag on something called LangChain. We'll go through that in this loader thing. I was at an AI conference, and I met the co-founder of LangChain, and he couldn't answer the question. Right. And, again, I'm not a professional coder, but turning a debug flag on my code is usually the 101. It's the first thing I do. And I don't do it for anybody else. I do it for myself. Right. So there's increased risk in this opaqueness. We don't know really what's going on. Leaders need to really think about internal training. Blocking it is not the answer. A lot of this message of the rise of shadow AI is because we've seen how blocking and sort of making believe that people weren't going to use the cloud because we told them not to, right? That people weren't going to pull out their credit cards, which we're still mopping up from. So leaders need to sort of stop being in denial and stop saying we're going to put moratorium on all ChatGPT in this corporation. And then there's an answer. The answer, just to give you sort of you probably already know it. Part of how we solved that shadow IT thing was DevOps, right? And we'll get more into that. We need to think about a lot of the code. I mean, a high percentage. I actually want to sort of run a little analysis, but when you run some of these models, I would say 80–90% of the code is open source code. So not only do we have another whole layer of shadow IT people running all this very complex dependency maps that aren't getting scanned, where we don't understand the sort of dependency mapping. And we know all the risks of that, right? It took us 10 years to learn, we actually have a phrase called software supply chain, right? How long did it take for Stephen sort of express that in a sentence? Well, this is going to happen. And even worse, this code is written by, a lot of that code is written by sort of Linux enthusiasts, infrastructure enthusiasts. This is written by researchers. They are no defense, they're brilliant people, but no offense, but they literally didn't care about a lot of the hygiene things that we really care about. This is our world, and this is happening whether you like it or not. Like I said earlier, if you've got 30,000 employees, you probably have 300,000 already have a swamp of, person X is using this version of ChatGPT conversation in a Python program. This one's using React. This one's using this, and they're all using different variants. So what I want to do is sort of go through this idea of the sort of ghost of shadow IT, the ghost of the past, the ghost of the present, I want to interlude with one of my favorite all-time peoples, Simon Wardley, his famous situation normal, everything. And I'm going to say everything really must change. Like, no, like we were just kidding with the cloud. Like, this is the real, like, stuff, danger. And then sort of the ghost of the future. And so I just took an amalgamation of like everything that, as you can imagine, I use ChatGPT to pull in like everybody's definition of, in fact, I don't even use ChatGPT. I use all my stuff in Jupyter Notebooks and Python. Just, I have complete control. I can do so many more things. And there's nothing that, like, anything I can do ChatGPT now, I can do in a Python program. So I took this, and this is the sort of the summarized version of Shadow AT, blah, blah, blah. But I think what's more interesting is why this happened. Why do we keep facing this challenge? And Jay Bloom, if you don't know him, I got to work with him for 3 years at Red Hat. He now works with Andrew Clay Schaefer, two of the smartest people I probably know. He has this idea of like, he explains these problems in the concept of economies. And he says that like what you have, and this is the traditional, we've had this all along, like this sort of accelerate differentiation economy, and he calls the sort of the other economy, the scale economy. So like that creation of value and the operational excellence. So this is what we had in Shadow IT, right? People were frustrated. Business units were like, I need to do this. And before cloud, and really sort of the plethora of open source, as a service instrumentations and services, they didn't have a choice. They had to just get in the queue and get yelled at by operations people. And I'm not anti-ops because I am an ops person, but like it was a lopsided transaction. And then sort of they found that like, hey, I don't need to get a server. I don't have to wait 10 months to get a server to go procurement and get this and have operations tell me it's not ready yet. We still have to do this, this, and this, right? And there were good reasons for all that. But they could just go out and pull a credit card. And we heard like incredible stories, for the last 2 decades, basically, but certainly the last decade, of like all these stories of business units just, and this is why we really had Shadow IT. Because it was this constraint of acceleration and efficiency, or sort of risk and speed, right? And he has this, and we'll come back to his ideas about, he calls it 3 economies. There's a middle economy that I want to talk about a little later that he talks about. But our good friend Andrew Schaefer really said it much simpler. Andrew is brilliant in taking the most simplest things and making them sound so brilliant, which they usually are. He called it the wall of confusion. Like, this was the mantra. If you weren't around in the early days of DevOps, this was it. It was the developers would throw things over the wall, operations would catch them or drop them and say, hey, you broke it, or, it doesn't work, and there was no communication. So a lot of that speed, like that initial tension of the sort of, I need speed. And by the way, I'm not waiting on you anymore because I do have alternatives, Shadow IT, cloud native, open source, all these things. And we still need to protect the brand, right? And so DevOps drove that, we saw like, so DevOps, we saw like, again, we know all this cloud workloads, people pulling out credit cards and just getting infrastructure as a services or SaaSes, people just using workflow productivity. If anybody's been around long enough, remember 37 signals, right? Storing stuff in Dropbox, Google Drive, right? Like, and this still happens, right? And then platforms like, so these were sort of busting at the seams. And again, what I think the sort of most promising thing of, Patrick, my involvement, everybody, most of the organizers here, different vendors like JFrog and Chef and Puppet, like we really did, you excuse the Americana, grease the skids for helping put, a guardrail or sort of driving, creating a navigational way for people to get that speed. Like, by the way, I'm not going to stop you in the speed, but if you could just follow these practices I put up, like a pipeline and CI/CD and these things, I think you can get the best of both worlds, because we really do need to protect the brand, right? And because the impact, right, is heavily fragmented applications, technical debt. Clearly, when people like, I'll list a couple of horror stories, more, but security and governability, right? Like, these are important things. there's a reason we have like internal risk, internal audit, like because they're designed to protect the brand. Sensitive data leaks, right? Like there's just horror stories of people going out and pulling their credit card, and and next thing you know, a bunch of private keys are just laid off all over the place, right? Like there was in the early cloud days, they were all over the place. And and then like I won't bore you with this is just some of the ones off the top of my head, right? Like, and some of them are just pure misconfiguration. Some are related to sort of moving too fast without the guidance of operations and infrastructure, the sort of the scale economy. But we had like things like the Sony breach, the British Airlines, other airlines, Equifax breach, Marriott, again, and the list could go on and on and on, right? And these are sort of the impact, and these big impact. This is like brand. This affects your brand, and in some ways there is. I always say this when I'm talking about IT governance and IT risk, right? Like. And I please don't take this as offensive. I'm just sort of describing some truths. If an airline crashes and people die, the airline typically doesn't go out of business. If sort of a human dies in a hospital due to negligence, typically the hospital doesn't go out of business. In a bank, if you lose your banking license, you go out of business, right? Like so. Like there is some real sort of penalty in certain industries that are far beyond like fines that you can basically sort of overcome. So when I come back to Jabe's 3 economies, he says there's a scope economy. So we think of it as the clutch, and so in some ways DevOps, or actually in ways DevOps was a clutch between this need for speed, freedom, flexibility, flow, cutting edge, advantage, innovation, prototyping, the list goes on, and sort of the safety of the standard, the securability, the compliance, the stability, the trustability, right? Oh, Damon Edwards always calls these the abilities, right? And so like that helped us well. In fact, Jabe wrote most of this really sort of driving like the platform as the true, the sort of platform engineering, or the sort of platform being the new kingmakers, if you will. But the same idea stands, that like there has to be sort of a clutch, and he calls this a scope economy, right? And so we look at some of the where we're at today, right? There's still reports of surface attacks. 7 to 2022, 7 out of 10 organizations still have been compromised by shadow IT. So as much as we've tried to solve the problem with sort of Jabe's notion of a clutch economy, or a scope economy that is a clutch, or what DevOps has done, what we've tried to do with platforms, all great things that have moved the ball forward, we still suck. And then here's a report by Cisco, 60% of organizations don't include shadow IT. This is some of their survey data, I think from Forrester. And 20% of organizations have experienced a cyber event due to unsanctioned IT resources, and 40% make mistakes impossible, all the data, blah, 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 right? Like 98% of cloud services are adopted without any IT oversight, right? That's their data, right? Like whether the numbers vary, but like the point is, here's, the meta point at this point, the meta point at this point in the presentation is that like we've tried really hard to fix this, and thank God we've done an incredible job as a community, double quote DevOps, double quote, right? But we're still not great. And we're about to join. My contention is whatever we thought, just like I said earlier, like if you thought Ruby gems were bad, wait till you get into dependency maps and LLMs, right? Like if you think we stink right now, wait till you have 300,000 people in your 30,000 person organization, or 300,000 versions of React and Python code that are doing these sort of shadow business, or things and fixing things. If you don't get your hands around this right now, and it's going to get out. So the point was DevOps was basically a really good clutch into in sort of using Jay Bloom's terminology of a 3 economy model. We built pipelines. We said, come here. Hey, you business person, I know I can't stop you from using the cloud and pulling out your credit card, but I can show you that you can do this. You can get the best of both worlds. You can use this stuff I've developed for you. You can help me determine what are the things that I don't provide that you might need. Let's collaborate, DevOps. And then we have MLOps, right? So what's interesting about MLOps is I think there's a lot here that we can learn from and use. But here's, I think, an interesting point, and I've been attending a lot of sort of generative AI conferences and reading a lot. And I think this is a point that most of the people who were basically our data scientists sort of moving into this generative AI world is there's a big difference between what ML ops and AI ops were trying to solve, which was there was a huge gap between data science and operational teams, right? And that's true, and that's still true. The point now, part of that gap has gone away with ChatGPT and chat conversations in programs and LLMs, because now only a small group of people in an organization could do this crazy stuff. Now just about everybody can do it. They might not know how it's working under the covers, and therein lies the danger. But so this is why I think there's got to be a different focus. And I'm not saying this, I'm hearing this from people who sort of invented the ML ops, the data scientists, the academia, the people who've been doing large scale modeling. You know, so if you take a look quickly, it's like this is a good presentation from a guy at Berkeley. You know, like the ML ops design, you know, like you gather, you know, and model development, and, you know, sort of in the middle there, a big part of that is model training. So this whole ops of the training the model. Well, in the future, like the LLM generator, you're not really training those models. They're called foundational models, your GPT-3, 5, your GPT-4, your BERT. All these ones are already pre-trained models that you use. Now I'll talk about how you can augment them, but it sort of changes. So ML ops out of the box, there's a lot of stuff there that actually doesn't really apply. And again, that's not me saying this. This is like data scientists, experts saying this. And, you know, so like, yeah, there's some things in the middle that you still want to do, like, you know, sort of prep and processing, a little less feature engineering. Model training, you're not really going to do a whole lot of that. Model analysis, though, it's going to change. So the way, there's a whole section, I'm going to write an article about evaluations and how they were in ML ops and now they need to change. So the evaluations of like, what were part of ML ops were like when you train the model, you had to validate that you're training, and you built, there was a whole sort of space of called evaluations. Well, now you don't really train the model, but you do want to know the consistency or possible drift of your prompts and how they react with pre-trained models. So it's just a new way of thinking about evaluations, which is very interesting. And then like I won't sort of bore you, but I think the most important thing is like when people talk about GPT, right? They talk about generalized pre-trained transformers, right? Like it is this beautiful, like the thing that made this so interesting was really sort of joining unsupervised and supervised learning. And I've read a whole article on this, and you know, it takes some of the things that were difficult to do at scale for for supervised learning, took the things that were like easy to do at scale for unsupervised, and then sort of created this generative type models. And again, if you're a data scientist, like you can virtually punch me in the nose right now for misexplaining this, but that's the general sort of non-data science. So there's another article called "The Rise of the Citizen Data Scientist," right? The people that we know enough to use it to be dangerous. That's who I am. And then there's a couple of things you need to know about, like if you're going to sort of, if you don't know this already, this notion of an LLM, a large language model. These are systems that are typically pre-trained. They're, they're most of them, a lot of them are built around the GPT constructs, and they're sort of predictive models. So there's tons and tons of data in it. In fact, like I think I have in one of my articles, like 63 or 70% it comes from Common Crawl of the original GPT-3, and then the 3.5, and then there's Reddit, and there's just other things that they just pull from, and then there's some real interesting, like it's these matrices of similarity, that make some interesting things. But some examples of these, what they call foundation models. These are pre-trained models that you use. So your Chat GPT is working against, by defaulting Chat GPT 3.5 or 3.5 Turbo, and then there's the GPT-4. And just quickly, a little history of GPT. If you don't already know, you probably already do. GPT was the third generation. There was a GPT-1, GPT-2. And I'm going rather quick through this just because I think a lot of people might already know this stuff, but just some of the time points. And then the other thing, I think if you don't already know, that one of the problems with foundational models is they're always stale. So like the GPT-3 is like November 2019, like that. It doesn't know anything that happened like in January 2020. In fact, the original 3.5 knew nothing of COVID. Right, like so, if you were playing with the original 3.5 and you asked COVID questions, it'd be like, what? I don't know. It sounds interesting, and then then the 3.5 was in 2021, right? So we still even have a stale version. We're like the November 30th, 2022. Like anything that's happened since November 3rd, 22, even the 3.5 and 4. Right, and then there's creating like turbo patch ones and stuff like that. But the point is, the models are always scale, and I'll come back to that later when I talk about how you get rid of hallucinations. Basically, LLMs are generally speaking statistical models, patterns. Again, a lot of times what we call these, like the GPT-3, the Da Vinci, all those ones that are part of OpenAI, we call them foundational models. And just if you want to understand, like I told you, it's a similarity. It's just this incredibly. No human could comprehend the complexity of its ability. And you can see this when you sort of play with ChatGPT and how it's able to put things together. But like at the simplest level, I saw a presentation and I went into ChatGPT and I just asked it to tell me if I put the word in new, what's the probability of the next word? And then 20% car, 20%, 15 York. And then if I put in a second word of York, the probability is New York City is 50%. It goes up. Higher, right? And then so you can get a little bit of insight of why you're able to get, and then you get insight of why you're able to get all these amazing answers. But then you can also get insight into why you would get like these hallucinations. Because there might be a point, some of my early experimentation was like, who is Gene Kim, right? Write me 3 paragraphs, Gene Kim. And then like the second paragraph, it starts talking about some doctor, still named Gene Kim, but it doesn't know. It's just trying to consume the similarity of sentences, and this one's showing up now, and so it's just gonna. So it's really. I saw a presentation last week where this guy said, when LLMs hallucinate, they're doing exactly what they were told to do. To tell you the probability of the answer of what they know from their sort of generalized data. And then the other thing you should know about is this LangChain. And I think this is interesting when I talk about the future and how we need to sort of think about like, how do we DevOps this thing? And I don't mean like DevOps, like create CI/CD, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but I'm talking about like what we successfully did with Shadow IT. How can we as experts who have lived through that, like deal with this, what we unless you disagree, what we believe might be a real train wreck if we don't get a handle on it, right? And LangChain, I don't know what the future is of LangChain. The LangChain is incredibly interesting and important right now because it's a beautiful abstraction. For those of you who are around in the early days of cloud, Damon Edwards sort of compares LangChain to Vagrant. I think it's an interesting, like for a lot of people who really couldn't figure out, like, oh, how do I get my sort of chef thing with this to get a cloud instance? Vagrant just made it like this abstraction level that you just put in sort of these config definitions, and it brought it up and it had all the things on it for you. And in the early days of cloud, that wasn't easy, either with Chef and Puppet. And so I think LangChain has that. So LangChain might go the way of not being useful as Vagrant is now, or might, sort of like, the LangChain folk might evolve it to be like their version of Terraform or whatever, right? But LangChain is very important right now, but very unstable in my opinion. But it's sort of like the only game in town. And so I just wanted to show you a couple of things of like these some models that I run. I'm not brave enough to run these things live right now, because they break. I mean, they do, like the people are changing stuff every minute, like every other day, stuff that works doesn't work. And then I got to go on Discord and ask questions. But here's just like who created DevOps. And then here's the thing, one of the things about LangChain, right? This is using LangChain under the covers, right? Even though I'm using OpenAI, but LangChain has this ability to create sort of composable generative AI constructs. And this is just a simple one where I literally, change the different models. And the first, 1, 2, 3, 4 are actually OpenAI. But then I use, if you haven't heard about Hugging Face is this place where people are just loading up all these other models that, some are interesting, some are insane. And if you don't know about temperature 0 is like, try to be as factual as possible. and it's a 0 to 1. 1 is like, try to go ahead and exaggerate. So just here's but I love the Flan T5 base. It says old John McCarthy. Yeah, again, you could see where its mind went, right? Somehow, like at first you're like, what the heck? Like I asked who won the World Baseball World Series, and I know most people in the UK that doesn't even make sense as a question, but the answer is the New York Yankees, who was my favorite baseball team. But like when you ask Flan, it says the Philadelphia Braves, which is a team that hasn't been around for like 70 years. But like I can't figure out like how it got there, but I can figure this one out. John McCarthy being sort of the guy who created, like you could literally see how through some weird probability thread it actually got to that answer. But anyway, just playing around, I changed the temperature to 1, right? And it just I'll make these slides available, but you can see there's a little bit of flair in the answers, so like DevOps is a philosophy or approach to software development and operations that merges software. Like that's what you get. You don't get like insane differences, but you just see this sort of, and you can play with the temperature. And here's the thing about that temperature thing. You would think like if you're doing research, I do it for 0 every time. But like I'll show you later, I've run some models where I'm doing promotion on my book, like having it summarize my book. And if it's markety, I want to increase. I don't usually do 1, but I might do 0.7, just because there's some things I might want it to add a little flair that I might not already have. And this is the thing I think this is the coolest thing about LangChain is by its name, it allows you to chain through different LLMs. So this is one where I didn't show the rest of the code, but I constructed basically 3 sort of tool in a chain. One was using the Google Search API. The second one is using a math calculator, an LLM that is a complex math calculator. And the third is just OpenAI. So I asked this question, what year did Deming die? How many years ago was that? And what were some interesting things that happened? And like the beauty was, all I had to do was ask that question and set up the 3 tools, and it figured out magically. So the point is, LangChain right now is an incredible tool. It's a little brittle, but it's an incredible tool, sort of like Vagrant was for the cloud. And then if we think about like this thing about how we're going to deal with the future, I've got sort of a summary, like we need to start thinking about abstractions, things we've done very well. There'll be vendors that will create sort of the Terraform version of LangChain, right? Like, but we sort of need to get on the same page and like try to solve this now. But anyway, to see what it did, it you don't see this, but it actually called the Search API. So I had set up the tool with the API for SERP API. Then it went ahead and called it didn't really need to call the math calculator, but it called the math calculator. Like it could have, like OpenAI could have done that, but I just wanted, show an example. And then it listed, all the events that happened the year Deming died, right? And that was the last chain, the third link in the chain basically was OpenAI. And then just sort of Simon Wardley, Simon Wardley has nothing to do with this presentation. I don't even know what it is. I love Simon Wardley. He's like a teddy bear, brilliant guy, like, one of my dear friends. But I always like his all I would say is, Simon, I love you dearly, but it wasn't the cloud that was the major disruption. It's this thing we're dealing with right now. And so like you've probably all seen this. The sort of time it took to get to 1 million users, Netflix 2.5 years, ChatGPT 5 days. This is crazy. Right? This is stuff you could not have predicted 2 years ago. There's sort of the stats on OpenAI. They literally, private beta in 2020, ChatGPT is released 2022. And then, like basically from November, December to January, 100 million users. Some astonishing numbers from this demand stage that I pulled up. ChatGPT has passed 9 billion all-time page visits, right? I mean, they're like, the thing is, they're sort of unprecedented. I mean, I think the last time we've seen sort of a sea change like this is the internet. So there's just some more stats of like crazy things. And this is the one, I was at this AI event last week in San Francisco, and it was basically run by a company called Pinecone. And we're going to talk about what we call vector databases and how the vector databases can reduce hallucinations is one of the techniques. And we'll talk about that. But Pinecone is sort of one of the leaders right now. They were early in on this. They're sort of the, you might think of them as the MySQL. They're not like, this isn't a relational database. So vector databases are in the form of these like complex matrices and embeddings, but like if you think about like what was happening with 10, 15 years ago, like these people are like sort of they're getting a lot of the oxygen. They're sort of being the default one that people who want to use more serious work go to Pinecone. Well, I met the COO and he was a real nice guy. But he made this statement in his opening session, like he said, we certainly believe, as many people, that this is the next major platform. The previous platform was the internet platform, and the Generate platform is going to be even bigger. I heard that over and over, and like that stuck with me. Like there was that means like, so everything we thought was incredibly interesting and was interesting, so, the internet and all the stuff we lived through, and then sort of the cloud and cloud native, those are just sort of minor bips on the big picture. And the truth is right now, not to get too meta, but like I think of writing an article calling "So long and thanks for all the fish, internet." I mean, if the foundational models already have the last 15 or 20 years rolled into it from the internet, and the new language model, and I know this is scary, and I'm not precluding that there is a doomsday scenario, but I don't think so. But then the models will train off of the models, and like there's already like new LLMs being built by basically having a dialogue with something like GPT-4. Right, so it's kind of so long and thanks for all the fish, right? This is just growth, right? But then here's where we start getting into the future problems, right? Which is, this one was interesting. You probably heard about like the sort of one of the first blips on OpenAI, which was, and this is just shows you how deep this problem is going to come, and where if we don't figure out how to manage it the way we managed sort of infrastructure, via cloud native, and DevOps and open source. There's so basically a bug in async IO manifested in a Redis application. OpenAI was using Redis for caching a bunch of sort of prompts. And because of this sort of race condition, whatever scenario, people started getting other people's prompts. And that scared the hell out of everybody. That was a ChatGPT thing, right? And then there's some theory that maybe even some of the pay for stuff might have got leaked, but there's no definite. But like, there's a great example of the complexity of the kind of problems we're going to see. And I'm not saying that if we figure out how to do a DevOps way of managing this, like the future, all those are going away. No, because they still don't go away. We got DevSecOps, we got like all these things, right? But the point is, there's the usage of this is going to go exponentially. We've already seen it exponentially high in organizations, and trying to block it ain't going to happen. And then that usage is opaque, but we do know it's built on billions of lines of open source code. I mean, I think we got a lot of work to do, folks. Again, this is another sort of like some of the things. There's the OpenAI folks saying that this is really just compromised desktops. But the point is, the traceability of these sort of compromised info stealers does find its way back to ChatGPT. So whether it was compromised workstations or not, like JP Morgan, this is another source. And I've heard this now, a couple of companies where friends of mine who work in large infrastructure, yep. One of our CTOs is saying that we have to basically put a moratorium on ChatGPT, and they laugh. They're like, they are such idiots. They have no idea. And I'm not saying JP Morgan is an idiot. It's not my answer. JP Morgan is one of the stealths of fintech financials, large bank scale. But trying to block this and putting a hold on it. The countries are putting a block on it. We have the EU Act, and the EU Act was a little bit tame for the first cut. I heard that next year it might get a little. But they just want to make sure that some social scoring, real time, make sure there's no, there, at least people are thinking about discrimination and social rights and things that that might go haywire, i.e. the internet. But I'll give you a little sort of cool anecdotal story though. So one of the models that I built was to write a summary of every chapter in my book. So this is the danger of these safeguards. I think they're necessary. but if we overreach, we're going to get ourselves in another problem. So one of my chapters in my Deming book is called Classified. So when I ran the summary, it basically, for that chapter, it says, I cannot produce any information on this chapter because it's classified. So there's already these like guardrails in place that recognize certain words. And I just wonder if like in 10 years from now, when sort of what's restricted today is not restricted in future, like how is that going to manifest, right? But the point is, you got to be a little careful about sort of hardwired, and that's clearly a hard, and I could have wrote a prompt to get around it, but the point is, it wouldn't do it out of the box. And then they have, again, some things about the generative AI, like making sure that transparency. So this is going to be a big problem too, right? Like again, like this, I'm going off on the rails on sort of meta conversation, but Sarah Silverton is trying to sue OpenAI right now. And because one of the things you can do is in sort of prompts, you can do this impersonation. So she's saying that she believes that there's sort of evidence that people are basically saying, I am the comedian Sarah Silverton, write me some jokes. Right. And there's that becomes an interesting, like, I mean, like I've written a lot of songs. I've been a songwriter from, like amateur, like show and stuff, I actually have some stuff on SoundCloud if you actually want, I won't post it, but you really want to go digging for it. I thought that was interesting. Like, what if I just said, I am Bob Dylan and Bruce Springsteen, please write me some lyrics to songs. Cause I can write rhythms like all day long, right? Like there's some weird stuff there. So, and right now, like OpenAI will keep, they've committed as of March of this year to not train their models on API calls. So there's another reason for using APIs. But they will keep the prompts, from what I understand, for 30 days. And that is because they're sort of looking for malicious behavior or things like that, and I think they're probably, if I can be a little more meta, there might be some, I can't see a world where lawsuits shut down generative AI, but I could see a world where like maybe people look for these impersonations or things that truly infringe, that maybe they would have to keep like logs for longer, or, and it's part of what the EU Act is trying to figure out, like, so be interesting. So coming back to Jabe's 3 economies, like we hate to figure out this new clutch because it's the same problem all over again. People need, people are going to bypass the infrastructure if you tell them no, or you tell them not now. Right? There's too much going on, and they have all the same freedom, flexibility, stay in the flow, cutting edge advantage, and we still need to protect the brand. I mean, the answer can't be, no, you can't do it. We have to sort of roll up our sleeves as an industry, the way we did with DevOps and dealt with cloud and cloud native and open source and all the things that sort of many people on this call have dealt with, companies like JFrog and Chef, Puppet, HashiCorp, Patrick, of course, Patrick DeBoer. And so anyway, so there's, so the future of, this idea is like, we need to be able to, create. The other big problem is we don't want all of the people in our organization using the same model, the foundational model for our information. One, they do hallucinate. Two, there's no competitive advantage. So there's also the, like, how do we sort of create kind of advantage, so this idea of hallucination is like, if I've got some real detailed information that I know that isn't in, like, for example, I know a lot about Gene Kim. So in the second or third paragraph, when it tries to Gene Kim, that's wrong. So is there a way? And there is a way. They're called retrieval augmentation techniques, where I can basically say, I'm going to load a bunch of data on top of the LLM. And there's the Pinecone, and there's a couple of really good, what they call vector databases that allow you to do this. And there's some other techniques where now at my prompt, I can sort of prefrontal data in the same format as the foundational model. It still gets the strength of the similarity algorithms and the matrices of these powerful LLMs. So I get the best of all worlds, right? And so one of the things, I've got an article coming out, should be out on TechStrong AI pretty soon, but I go into detail about these 3 techniques, and there's other prompt engineering, but one where I can inject search and then sort of create a vector database from the output of that search. and then load that in and then use like OpenAI to ask questions. But the first set of data it's going to see is the search. So I can get, so one of the things I run now is I do a little news runner thing where I look for any Deming news over the last couple of days. And if it pops up, I load it into, I take the websites, I sort of scrub them, I load them in the vector database, and I say, give me a summary of all the news, right? And it's something that takes me like 3 minutes to run, right? And, so that's another way to get new news about a subject and still use the power of the LLM. And so really what I do really is combine search with vector databases, but you could just use the search. And then there's this new thing, which I really haven't had time to play with, but it could be the sort of the sort of answer to a lot of problems. It's called PEFT. In fact, Patrick turned me onto this, and I still haven't had a chance to build a model with this, but it's sort of like patching existing foundational models. So it's sort of, and from what I understand, the difference would be that like vector databases still use prompt parameter space, and this might not. So there could be an advantage over, because right now I think, right, I asked the people at Pinecone what their thoughts were, and they believe that, obviously they're a vendor for vector databases, but like vector databases are here to stay. I got some, I'll make these slides available, like what would be the advantages of using like the SERP API with an LLM, right? You can sort of search the data, be able to run again. Like what I could do is I don't need the vector database. I could take the search output, summarize it myself, and then plug it into the prompt to get OpenAI, right? A cleaner way is to take, if it's a lot of data, go ahead and throw that into a vector database. And then basically, and so just for those still paying attention now, Pinecone is probably the best, sort of up to date. The data scientists who figured this out. There's something called Chroma, which is sort of you'll see in most of the Hello World examples. And then the big players have obviously not sort of been blind to this. So Mongo has a vector database option. Redis has one too. So we'll see how those guys compete against, or those companies compete against companies like Pinecone and Chroma, and there are others. And then the PEF stuff. All right, so just some things to sort of round down here. I just want to say that, so what we need to do, and sort of the ghost of the future, to deal with the shadow, we need to standardize internal. We can't say it's not going to happen, don't think about it. No, we need to get ahead of the curve. And in all transparency, I'm just completing, it should be out in the next 2 weeks, my first sort of, it's going to be an open source enterprise version of how to do all this stuff. And I know there's 100 people to do it, but my focus is if you're an enterprise person like us or DevOps, it'll be a little more malleable because the examples are very focused towards how we want to solve problems. So I think training, don't ignore it. I would say also don't go rush out and buy the first product that you see. I think there's going to be a graveyard of people who are going to come in and try to use LLMs or OpenAI solutions to do this. And in 2 years from now, they'll be gone, or they'll be acquired by another bigger company, and chances are, usually when that happens, they're gone too. So make sure you start thinking about it. Instead of letting people just write LLMs or use LLMs all over the place, start creating, a place where people can aggregate and share the knowledge, right? So stop ignoring it. Create internal GitHub projects. I think what could be interesting is rethinking domain-driven design for generative AI models. Sharing and using common source repositories, creating notebooks, infrastructure, the scaffolding, all these things in GitHub, in Git models, GitHub, or GitLab, or whatever your flavor is there. Think about a secure LLM delivery model. Okay, what is the pipeline? So we're actually going to run, we wanted to keep it small, so it's only invitation only, but we probably will run another one. We're going to run the first DevOps LLM hackathon at TechStrong. And Patrick's coming. There's a really good Adam Jacob is coming. There's a list of really cool people. Well, all these minds that have been around this problem for the last decade or more. We're going to throw us all in a room for three days and try to figure out what it's doing. And we'll everything out of that's going to be open source and Creative Commons, and we'll have a lot of we're getting a professional tech writer to sort of document the whole thing. But this is a lot of what I've been thinking about is. I like to make money. I like to build companies. But right now, for me, it's a time to just, like we did in DevOps, I didn't think a lot about making money in the early days of DevOps. Like, money came. But what I thought about is like, this is a hard problem. I've been in the industry for many years where IT sucked. And then I went to Ghent and I saw Patrick and I saw Steve Nelson Smith and I saw like these incredible young people. You're welcome, Patrick, for calling you young. Just kind of like, oh my God, like this is what, like the reason why I was going to get out of the industry. I'm not going to get out of the industry now. I believe that like we have to sort of put, roll up our sleeves and not ignore this stuff. I was having a good friend with a really smart guy who's like, that stuff's nonsense. I'm like, do you agree that it's going to happen, whether you hate it or like it or what? Do you agree it's going to happen anyway? And at the end of the debate, the answer was yes. I'm like, well, then like we got to deal with it. Secure workflows, like we really, a lot of what we do for scanning vulnerabilities and policy, like will apply, but there'll be sort of different nuances in depending how the flows work, what we're looking for. Maybe not all, maybe there's a ton, not maybe, I guarantee you, there's a ton of academia-based Python libraries that are not in NIST. That's, I'd love to somebody to prove me wrong. I'd be happily be proved wrong. But like I bet you there's a lot of like, we're up to find out a whole new list of CVEs. New observability patterns, this whole idea of evaluations, ML ops evaluations are going to change for this new type of ops. So thinking about like, is there drift in the output we get from a prompt that we've used in production for a month? We've added some additional data to the vector database. Can we baseline the output that we get from? So it's a whole different way of thinking about evaluations in this sort of, I'll just call it LLM ops. And then this is something a friend of mine are working on. So, one of the things I learned a lot from working with FDA customers, like pharmaceutical customers, is they have some of the most interesting risk management systems. They actually go back to Deming. Like they're not like state of the art from a technology standpoint, but like if you read some of the guiding principles in the FDA, I mean, some of that stuff is core Deming. And like, if you were to sort of implement it in today's world, is some of the most powerful risk guidance information across all of the industries. And one of the things that is very prevalent is this sort of the CAPAs, like this corrective action and preventive actions. And then if you have seen the Howie. So I think an interesting place for me where I want to get started in discovery, like I'm not trying to create a product. I want to go in and help companies figure out how to do this. Like the only thing I'll probably look for is bring my training stuff in, which will be open source anyway, but like you pay me to come there and I'll train it to you. The guy who wrote it, train it. But like, I want to have the companies not to buy a product because every vendor is going to come out and say, oh, I got a product that does this. You don't need a product right now. What you need is what you did with DevOps. You need to invest in human capital. And so, again, like this is something that we've been, like this was generated by a Python program with a chat conversation, taking some existing Kappa reports, saying that I want to basically run it through sort of the load it in the Howie incident management process, and this is just something really interesting too. I think can work in our world. It's this idea of classification. So this one is just a silly one, but like. One of the things as I got deeper into it, I realized, like the power of what we can do with this. So this is an example where I had ChatGPT write me a little story with 3 characters: Jake, the baseball player, Amelia, the artist, Ryan, the author. So what I did is I took that story and I did a classification of those 3. And then I created another story with 3 different people. And it told me who those were and what they played. So think about like incident and stuff like that. So we can sort of, I don't know what the answer is, but if we can think about like risk and incident and sort of create prompts with interesting classifications, then like think of what we could start producing. And again, I don't think we're going to need a vendor to do this. I think we just need to roll up our sleeves and learn how to use this technology, like that sort of the father of API said in the beginning. So anyway, this is the first slide repeated. Let's see, how many people are still here? Did I scare everybody off or what? Anyway, that's what I'm working on now. It's the way I'm thinking about things. If you want to sort of collaborate or talk about this, I always appreciate conversations. I'm pretty, as you can tell, pretty passionate about like this thing being a big part of our future. And my goals right now are very much like my early days of goal was let's solve the problem. Let's use the community. I remember early on at Velocity O'Reilly, Adam Jacob gave this really great presentation. It's still out there about, sort of, it was like you could pick any story you wanted. He gave you like this thing, and it was, and it was Adam Jacob too, right? So it was like awesome human. And somebody asked the question like, is Chef a DevOps problem? And him and Jesse Robbins, the CEO, both stood up and said no. I mean, they quicker than you could, and they would have had every right at that point. This is like 2011. They had every right to say, yeah, of course we are. But they were like, I felt so proud to be working at Chef, and like they both stood up and like emphatically said, no, this is not, like they understood that DevOps was a problem that needed to be solved, and it wasn't a product. Anyway, thank you so much, everybody. I'll make this available, but there's some of my articles and then some other interesting articles that I've learned from. So there you go.
There you go, indeed. Thank you so much, John. That was whoa, so much stuff. I don't pretend to have understood all of it, but lots and lots of really, really great insights on that, and yeah, really, really exciting stuff. So we've got a couple of questions here in both in the chat and in the Q&A. Anybody else, if you fancy coming off of mute, opening up your video and asking a question, please do feel free to do that. Let me just leave a moment to see if anyone wants to do that. Anyone brave enough?
Yeah, I wanted to ask about API standards, global API standards, and the way applications currently advertise themselves on how, a system built by humans to be, to have a process that is consumed by systems that are built by humans, again, for standard transactional purposes. But if you have AI and you want your AI to be autonomous, your personal autonomous assistant, hey, go get me some bread, go get the food in, or go do some gambling for me, or go help me with my finances, or go find out what's going on in the learning, go pitch my job against, what new programming languages are coming up, or what new things I've got to do. What do you mean there are no jobs and I've got to, revisit my bricklaying skills from when I was in the youth, otherwise I'm not going to make any money, all this kind of trend analysis, and having my personal system plug into the real world in a way that it can understand data, and then that data that it gets to download from other services which are AI oriented, it needs to have, API standards today are not going to tell you how that data relates to the data you want to collect and the things you want to understand, different languages, different standards, different, master reference data. So I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, well, we've got to throw all the standards for API integration basically in the bin and build a new API standard, AI API for AI, AI for AI, if you like, is an API standard. Otherwise, we're not going to have autonomous AI that can go out there and work within, the confines of the boundaries you set it. So if you say, hey, here's 100 quid, go gamble that and find me the best returns, it's got to be able to go out and consume services where it can do it. And it's not going to be able to do it with the current API standard, I don't think. I think that because it needs to search, find services and things.
Yeah, I think you raised a bunch of questions. I mean, just sort of jokingly, like creating an assistant that gambles 100 quid for me would not be my first sort of endeavor. But yeah, I think there's a lot in that question, right? One is and like there's sort of like there's the I don't really know, but like let's learn together. I think the part of the domain driven, like or the things that have worked successful in what we've accomplished over the last 20 years or 10 years or 15 years, are there some models there, and then like in parallel with that, let's keep our eye on something like LangChain. Like they just got like 35 million investment. I'm hoping they're smart enough to hire some of the sort of Silicon Valley people that have developed, open API and, like ask me for advice, which they don't. Like I would basically make sure that like with my 35 million, I'd be basically finding people who are you know, sort of key players in the open API spec stuff, right? Like, because I think that's a big, because if LangChain just keeps going down to hire every smart data scientist they have, like they have to, and this is why I'm trying to kick a lot of dust. I want to, you know, like I'm just one guy, but like let's cut this dust, is like to try to get in the face of the pine cones and the open AI and the Claude, the new sort of Anthropic guys, right, who are getting a lot of press right now, and try to tell them that they need to sort of migrate into a world of expertise that can sort of combine. So yeah, you know, but so LangChain, like hoping they navigate the right way, either because they're forced to. As you get in the enterprise is going to ask questions like this. You know, how do we create open API standards, you know, out of this stuff? Because right now it's really just you know, it's very simple stuff, right? It's like, it is like, and it's sort of Wild West, right? Like, you know, and, you know, that, like I said, I you know, I didn't have time to show, but like there was a bug that I was dealing with for like 3 or 4 days of a model that worked for like a week and a half, 2 weeks. And I went out on Discord, I asked everybody, and I got wacky answers like uninstall and reinstall LangChain. That didn't work. And all I did is moved an import statement that was failing right after the pip install, and it worked. Yikes, right? You know, code that doesn't have debuggers. So there's a long way to go. But I'm not going to try to even come close to solving the get me bread, get me butter, you know, go ahead and send. I'm going to focus on how do we use these tools to solve problems like incident management, risk, personas that exist in IT. And I don't know what the only thing, the thing I know right now is, and it's unlike everybody else who's going to basically, I'm not smarter than the average bear, but what I will tell you is everyone who is smarter than the average bear is going to tell you they have a solution right now, and they're going to convince you to get it. What I'm smart enough to know is none of us have a clue what this is going to look like in 2 or 3 years. So the best way to learn is to learn together, not making assumptions, get smart people together, and literally just like I'm doing these. This is why I did some of the first DevOps hackathons. It was Chef hackathons. I'd get 30, 50 people in Chicago on a Saturday to just hack on Chef in 2011, right? Because we didn't know what Chef really could do in the enterprise. So I don't know that really completely answered the question, but you know, I do think that we're going to have to put severe back pressure. We need to not say that stuff's not, I'm not saying you're saying this, but like that stuff's nonsense. It's never going to happen. We need to get right in front of it, and we need to deal with it. We need to convince our C-level people that this is going to happen, and, you know, let us start figuring out while it happens together. And I know I sound Pollyanna there, but I've been that way. You know, if somebody would have posted me with the facts of the early days of DevOps, I probably would have been selling shoes right now. So.
Awesome, brilliant. Great question, John. Great answers, John. Yeah, I can listen to this for hours. It's fantastic stuff. Final question comes in from Anastasia, who asks, do we think AI is going to replace DevOps engineers? What do you think on that one, John?
Yeah, I think this is, you know, if you ever heard of the concept of Jevons paradox, right? Like every time we're convinced a certain technology, and it's always technologies that sort of do the head fake on us. They're abstraction technology, or abstraction, where they take away a lot of the complexities. And the original thought is, oh, wow, that's going to eliminate a lot of jobs. But what happens is those abstractions, Herbert Simon talks about this too, right? Like, you know, and it just creates more use and more things happen. So I think what's important for people to understand is that I do think there's going to be a direct attack, you know, and like, you know, hold your table and don't spit at me and yell at me just yet. I think the notion of how people code today is going to be completely different than how they code in 2 years. I think, you know, this is going to sound like I'm a jerk, but I have a feeling that we won't need 5,000 people going to KubeCon to learn where to put commas in YAML statements, right? Because, you know, like, I mean, like the stuff I'm doing now with like Copilot and just ChatGPT, I mean, things that I forget, like even at the OS level, like how do I tell what, I need to put a patch, I get to get the right one. What was that command again for the LSRB? Like, how do you get, like all that stuff is gone. I just asked ChatGPT. I asked ChatGPT, hey, I've got a 4-level nested JSON object. And like I need to, and here's an example, and I need to pull out a nested list in the variables. Like, I'm like, I can fumble around, I can go into, I just asked and like, bang, it was my code. Variable 1, comma, variable 2 equals the element in the list, which was 2 list elements, which was the 4th nested in the JSON object, right? Like, so I think the opportunity for us is either A, retire, B, learn, Patrick has talked about, like, there was this thing moves so fast that even the terms of what the new roles, like it was prompt engineering and now it's sort of AI engineering. And I think you're going to have to learn, like to change, right? Like situation normal, everything changes, right? Like, just putting your head in the sand about change. So I think there's going to be a lot of work for a lot of people if you embrace the changes. I don't know exactly what the change is going to look like. So the question of, are people going to lose their jobs? Not if they don't want to, because Jevons paradox has proves that decade over decade over decade.
Awesome, brilliant. Okay, so probably out of time for questions now. All I can say now is, my God, you filled my head with so much stuff, and it's been an absolute pleasure, John. Thank you so much for speaking. Thank you to everyone who's put out great questions in the chat, and great chat as well, if you've been following along with that. So that's that for John's talk. No, you didn't lose half the audience in your chat. There's a really impressive looking dropout rate there. Let's move on to the final little bit of the meetup, which is the quiz. As I said earlier, we've got some books to give away from O'Reilly. First of all, we've got DevOps Tools for Java Developers, which I think is written by at least 2 or 3 people from JFrog, which is a great little link in. We've also got 97 things that every cloud engineer should know, and the co-written by Nathan Harvey, a name who you'll be familiar with from the Chef days. And we've also got Hacking Kubernetes. So this is a book by Andrew Martin, good friend of ours, and Michael Rosenblatt. So if you're in the UK, I will send you your choice of one of these 3 books if you win the quiz. If you're not in the UK, sorry, I can't afford the postage. So I've put in a Slido link into the chat, and hopefully you can see your name on the screen now as we go. I just need to open another window over here to run the quiz from. One moment, please. So yeah, please do join for the quiz if you're interested in winning the book. Sorry. Give me one moment, please talk amongst yourself. Please go to the bar and get another beer. My laptop's decided to be slow right now. Here we go, we're almost there now. And right, we're in. So in theory, now I can start this quiz from down here. So, okay, so we've got a few questions there, mostly very easy questions. What we'll do is we'll just run through these quickly. There's a little time limit, I think 20 seconds to answer. So get your browsers ready. We're going to start the quiz. Basically, whoever gets the most answers right in the shortest amount of time wins a book. So off we go. Right. So first question. So John often cites someone known as the father of quality management. Who is that? I know, difficult question. So please go in and put your answers there. Is it W. Edwards Deming? Is it Jonathan Demme? Is it Demi Lovato? Or is it Edward Woodward? Not quite sure what I thought of him. So there we go. Let's see. Yes. Oh, only half of you got it right. I'm interested. I'm intrigued by that. Jonathan Demme is the director of Silence of the Lambs. So yeah, well done to everyone who got that right. So moving swiftly on to the second question. Over the last 40 years, John has written how many books? Is it 1, 11, 111, or 1,111? Someone just pointed this out. Those numbers are not in binary, they're in decimal. Here's a clue, here's one of them. I'm not giving this one away. You don't want this one, it's all dogged and terribly dirty, so you don't want that. Okay, so yeah, almost everybody got that right. Well done, congratulations. So John OC, you're at the top of the leaderboard at the moment. Well done. Next question. There was a notable paper released in 2020 on LLMs. It had an interesting name. It's one of these 4. Statistic robins, hyperbolic dolphins, stochastical parrots, or mathematic macaques. I'm glad I'm only drinking water before trying to say some of those names. There we go. Ooh, very interesting. So this didn't come up in John's talk. So it's back to your general knowledge of LLMs. And the correct answer there is stochastical parrots. So well done if you got that right. Question 4. Microsoft have just announced pricing for their AI-enabled productivity tools. But how much are they charging? Is it 30 cents a month, $30 a month, $3,000 a month, or $300,000 per month? Boom. Well done, well done. Okay, and the last question. So London DevOps, we've got 2 more of these virtual meetups this summer, featuring, so 2 more meetups. Who are the other 2 DevOps titans who are going to be speaking? Clue, one of them is right here. Oh, he's just turned his camera off. Cunning. There we go. Yes, well done. Mark Miller and Patrick Dubois. Well done. So there we go. Congratulations, Michael. Michael, are you there? Do you want to come off mute? No? Okay, that's fine. Well, Michael's won with 4 out of 5 correct. I said it would be an easy quiz, but it obviously wasn't because nobody got them all right. So yeah, congratulations to Michael. You have won. If you can email me with your location, if you're in the UK, I hope you're in the UK because I'll send you the book.
بعتيلي عنوان بتاع انا فزت قعدت في البتاع قالوا اسئله في البتاع ده بيبعتوا كتاب اللي في يوكي هيبعت له كتاب قعدت اجاوب معاه.
We couldn't quite hear what you were saying there, unfortunately, but let's take that one offline. So Ari, do we let Ari come second? I don't know. TJ, R. Davis, Sabri, well done. Congratulations. Let me liaise with Michael, work out where he is. If not, then I'll be getting in touch with you directly to give you your books. All right, so that went quite well, I think. That's it from us for tonight, I think. So yes, we've got 2 more virtual meetups. One with Mark, one with Patrick. I'm really looking forward to them. I think Patrick's talking on a similar subject as well. So that's going to be really good, really exciting stuff. So all that remains for me to say is, well, keep an eye out for those meetup invites coming out. They'll be coming out soon. Same format. Hopefully this one's been reasonably good and we've got it right. And if so, that promises that the next 2 should be good. So yeah, all I have to say now is thank you massively to our sponsors, to JFrog and Ari for putting together the Zoom, to Prism Digital, to WeShape and O'Reilly. Have I missed any sponsors? I don't think I have. I hope not. If I have, then please keep paying us. But thank you to everyone for coming. I know it's it's actually turned out to be a reasonably nice evening. I had to close the blinds there. So if you're here now and watching this, then thank you so much for participating. But the biggest thanks, I think, for a hugely entertaining and informative talk, which I'm going to be replaying several times because of the things I just want to play with. So yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much to Mr. John Willis. Okay. Right now in the room there'll be like cheers and applause and everything like that. So yeah, actually, if you're near your mute button, then give them a round of applause. Yeah, come off mute. Yeah, it doesn't really work very well, does it? I'm sure we appreciate the sentiment. Okay, so yes, thank you so much, John, and thank you to everybody who's come. And yeah, we'll see you in a few weeks for the next summer session. Thanks, everyone. Cheers and good night.
Thank you. Good night.